Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here live with you on the internets. If you would like to support this channel, get an additional bonus live stream once a month, as well as additional bonus blog posts and behind the scenes artwork, you can support this channel on patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a look at some of my comic books, read them for free, you can preview them on news.jeremy.net. That's the archive for my newsletter. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. So, today, figure drawing. As regulars know, I am an inveterate figure drawer, and once a month I have to go through and sort out the drawings that I'm going to include with my blog posts, because some of the drawings, the blog posts that I have are, comic book based and showing my creative comic book work in progress. Some of them are me sharing my my figure drawing work from class, because I've been attending figure drawing classes regularly, at least once a week, for probably a decade now. And while I still feel like I have a lot more to learn, I have a lot more to grow, there's still things, even basic fundamentals, I still struggle with. I have seen how much making figure drawing a regular part of my study and practice has helped me improve as a comic book storyteller, as a visual artist in general. It's overall improved my draftsmanship and craftsmanship. So let's go through, and this is going to sort through the last month's worth of figure drawing. And I've got a pretty big stack of drawings here, so it may take the whole hour. And if it doesn't, then maybe I'll go through and do some revisions on some of my lesser successful figure drawings, because that's also something I like to do. There's three categories. There's the category of drawings that, yes, I'll include these in my blog because I'm happy with how they came out, which is a smaller category, as I've been getting more and more critical over the years. There's the category of drawings that, no, this is horrible, it's not going in the blog. And then there's the category of, this is so bad that I need to learn what I did wrong and redraw it better. And those are the drawings that I save for my Fixing Bad Figure Drawing series. So currently, I am taking a class at the Animation Guild with Carl Ganas called Anatomy, Light, and Tone. So it's not long poses like, a half hour or anything. Mostly it's like 10s and 15s. So, but we work on working with tone paper and really using lighting to describe anatomy, as opposed to just drawing diagrams and, mapping out where the bones and the muscles attach to the bones. This drawing is the top of the stack because, let's bring the camera down a little bit. I'll bring it back out when I come to the larger page drawings that are on newsprint. The ones that are on newsprint tend to be like 5-8-minute poses, whereas the ones on toned paper, I only use that for 10 or 15s, because there's really not much point in using them for anything shorter than that, because for my case, I'm not a particularly fast artist. If I'm doing anything that's shorter than a 10-minute pose, there's really no point in me drawing a 15-minute, because I'm not going to get much detail in there. So I see Jay King's in the chat. How you doing, man? What's good? Thank you for stopping by, going through some figure drawings here. So this one is going to go on the blog because I generally struggle with drawing on toned paper. There's something about having that additional value there, which is supposed to make it easier, because the toned paper handles like your second level of midtones. So there's a whole broad range of midtones that you would normally be drawing in there that the tone paper helps you with. So you really can just focus on your lights and your shadows, and you're supposed to let the paper do the work for you in terms of the midtones. I've always struggled with that. I'm not sure why. This might be the best tone paper drawing I've done since I've been in the class. And I'm not saying that to brag that this is a masterpiece. I'm saying I've struggled with it. This is probably the best I've done thus far. So I'm pretty happy with this drawing that's going in the blog. And when I show you my other toned paper drawings, you'll see, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Most of his tone paper drawings are not that good. And I always mention this, I don't bring this up either to pat myself on the back for the good drawings, or to trash myself and get pity for my bad drawings. Learning to self-critique is a very, very important skill for an artist. The best thing you can do is sit through your work, assess it, and not just say, oh, this is bad, I'm a crappy artist, but to say, these are the things that are wrong with it, these are the things that I need to focus on the next time I'm in front of the model. That's the purpose of this. So this one will go in the blog. Let's see here. This one, it's better than some, but I really kind of spent so much time focusing on the lights, I didn't really get much contrast in with the shadows. It feels very lumpy and patchy. It's probably more complete than some of the other drawings that I will choose to put in, but I don't really like it. Let's see here. Now, this one, oddly enough, less complete, but I think I like it a little bit more because in this case, I didn't get around to doing much of the shadow except for that arm, but I really feel like I did a good job in terms of describing what's going on in terms of the lights, how they're wrapping around the form, describing. See, this gap I left here is a whole shadow that was cast by the arm, and often in class, we're encouraged to not draw. It's one thing if it's a cast shadow onto a form directly below it that describes form, but if it's a shadow of an arm crossing a body, a lot of times the way that these shadows wrap around make it harder to understand the form instead of making it easier. But I tried to take this and move the shadow along the curve of the rib cage and then back out along the pelvis. I do like this one better, and I'm kind of torn because I actually do feel like I handled the lights better. It makes me want to put this one in, even though I know it's not that great of a drawing, so I may go back and forth. This is one of those that's kind of on the bubble. For now, I've decided no, because generally what I try to do is if it's on the bubble, I just try to presume not put it in, because, you know, I end up with a stack of drawings that when I go to post them on my blog, I'll look at it, and then weeks later or months later, I'll be looking at it and be like, why did I pick this? This thing's horrible. So, and that is a little bit of me having this self-pity, I'll admit that, but pardon me while I take a sip of coffee, still waking up a little bit. So, this one I want to put in. I just wish I had left that hand out altogether, because the hand had some strong foreshortening to it, and it was coming like this arm coming in, but with her hand, like her wrist was sort of jutted away from her body, like out to the left. But imagine that coming right at you. Not right at you, because obviously this is sort of a side view. It was a weird angle for that hand, and I didn't sit down and take the proper time to draw the foreshortening for it because I was spending all my time working on the torso and the form. And I actually feel like this is probably one of my better efforts, but that hand is so horrible that it kind of poisons the drawing for me. And this is, again, one of those things I need to get better at, is if I'm going to do the figure, I need to decide. If I'm going to do something I don't have time to do it properly, then I need to just realize, just leave it out. Because I could have, in order to do this hand properly, I would have needed to ignore all of this and just drawn the arm and that hand. Because it was one of those where the hand takes time. The hand has enough detail and complexity to it as an entire figure unto itself. So unless you have a simple pose when you're doing something like this, it's hard to block all that in. So I think that I may photograph this one, or I may document it for myself for personal records in terms of what I did with the rest of the figure, but that hand bugs me enough I don't want to put it in the blog. And then this one, it's not bad, but again, very unfinished. I'm spending a lot more time working on the lights as opposed to it being kind of a 50-50, which really, when you're drawing with tone paper, you kind of should decide, is it going to be a high key or a low key? Is it going to be mostly darks or mostly lights? And I've been trying to push towards using mostly lights because generally when I'm drawing with just a charcoal pencil, it's mostly dark. So I'm really trying to push towards the higher key, but I don't feel like this one, you know, it was a good start for a drawing, it just didn't finish. So now this one I think I'll put in. This one is not a perfect drawing, and it's a little bit patchier in terms of like there being a seamless tone of light and dark. In fact, this probably brings up something. I may want to bring this drawing back to my figure drawing instructor and ask him additional questions about unifying the lights and the darks. But I'll photograph this first because in all likelihood, you'll probably draw on top of it. And I always try not to post the drawings that he has drawn on top of because it's no longer my work. It's, you know, it becomes an instructional tool that he's done notes on it for me personally. So, but yeah, I do like this one. We'll put this one in the blog. Now this one, with toned paper drawings, I don't usually have time in class to go during a break and do a little diagram to try to figure out what I did wrong with it. Because with my shorter poses, you know, my 5, my 8-minute poses, when the model takes a break, you know, every half hour or so, every 25 minutes or so, usually during the model's break, I'll go back and I'll look at some of my drawings and I'll redraw them again during class and try to figure out, well, what did I miss with this? And so on this one, I actually had time with the tone paper and I wanted to come back because I was like, this felt like it should, just by the way that I got the basic block into the bicep and kind of indicated the anatomy of the forearm, it felt like it should work, but it just didn't all come together. So I came back and did another diagram here on the tone paper. And with this one, I kind of thought of it more, I tried to approach it like a George Bridgman approach. Really like, here's my side plane of the bicep that's facing towards the front of the figure. I mean, here's my front plane, the front of the bicep that's facing towards the front of the figure. The side plane, the outer bicep and the shoulder, and that's being hit by the light. So the side of the arm is being hit by the light. And really trying to make it like boxing it. A box going this way, box going that way. And that helped give it a little bit more definition. And that is another thing that I struggle with is imposing that sense of specific fronts and sides of a form onto a figure. Because, you know, you can handle an arm in blocks, you can handle it in cylinders, you can handle it in terms of describing in terms of like an ellipse at one end or like an egg shape for the muscle at one end and then blocky at the ends. You can, you know, treat the arm can be treated in a variety of ways. And this was one of those where I needed to be aware of what the arm needed in order for it to communicate the mass I wanted. So that's something I still struggle with. I don't know. Maybe I'll photograph it, maybe I won't. This one's another maybe, which, well, we know what happens with the maybes. Let's see here. And this one, it's not a bad start, but I just didn't get very far on it. Sometimes I spend all of my time just trying to work the white so I don't get time to put any shadow in there. I'm wondering with some of these tone paper drawings if I should save them and just work on finishing them, just as a personal study craft. I may do that. So maybe I'll take some of these bad tone paper drawings and I'll go in and do some studies after that, on that. So these are just some notes from class. Yeah, I think I'm going to save that big batch of tone paper drawings to do studies from because that is something I need to do, is just work on I don't work on it that much except for when I'm taking this class. I probably should be doing it more often. I do like this one, and I think that I'm going to put it in the blog, and mainly because when I was drawing it, I don't know why, but Rubens popped into my head, Peter Paul Rubens, and I think that I was thinking of some of Rubens' drawings and trying to channel that in terms of how I was rendering these volumes. And maybe it's just that I've seen a Rubens drawing that was on a light blue paper somewhere, but tonally it reminded me of that, and I kind of, sometimes you can key in and channel the rendering of the old masters. And I wish I could do it all the time and I could do it consciously and just say, well, how would Michelangelo render this? How would Rubens render this? How would Rembrandt render this? And, you know, just, but again, part of that is me not spending as much time studying the old masters and doing master studies actually draw from the work, as I should. So it's another thing to get back to. So many things I should be doing that I feel like I'm not. You know, it's the artist's constant dilemma. There's not enough hours in the day to make all the things that we want to do. And for me, a lot of it is not even about the making. It's about the studying those who truly have mastered the craft. So this one, it describes some volumes, but not well. It's flat in a lot of places, and even the places where it's supposed to be describing form turning, it really feels like I just sort of botched this one. I'm gonna put this one in the I need to redraw it to, you know, for studies pile. This one I'm gonna keep. I'm pretty happy with this, even though again, I didn't get as much contrast in terms of light and dark as I should have. I really probably should have worked these shadows a little deeper and still left maybe this level of lightness towards the edge as a reflected light. But I do feel like in terms of overall descripting, like the breast running down the rib cage, the oblique muscles, the abs and the thigh, there probably needed to be more definition separation here in terms of maybe a faint crease in terms of the leg bending right here. It feels a little bit too much like the leg is just flowing out instead of an actual bend of it being sat up. So, and I would really wish I could remember exactly what the model looked like, because that's something that, in terms of comparing that, trying to figure out why I didn't draw that. Was it something that I just didn't see there? And if I didn't see it, why wasn't that bend there? Because those are things that I need to understand about anatomy so that I know when I'm drawing the figure, do this, not that. So this one I do like. I will put it in, even though like with many, there's flaws. This one is just too flat. I'm not really working volume. It's more like I'm placing tones in the right place. This is the inside, a little bit of mid-tone, and then this is the side facing the light. But it just feels too flat and too graphic. To be honest, I think I was trying to think about how I draw forms when I'm inking them when I'm drawing comics. And I was trying to describe the form like that because I've been doing some ink anatomy studies on my own. And I've been getting, I think better at describing forms turning with ink. And I was trying to apply that to this, but I realized that's in a bit of a ass backwards approach, because what I really need to be doing is just working on describing tones naturalistically. Oh, I see Amar's in the chat. Hey, thanks for showing up, man. We're just going through some figure drawing. Thanks for joining us. But yeah, it's a bit ass backwards to be applying my inking to charcoal pencil drawings. What I really need to do is continue to improve my description of form with the charcoal pencil and then translate that to ink for my comics work. So again, I'll put this in the needs to work on pile. And it's bad when you grab a drawing and you're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. I am looking at an arm turned, folded in. Oh, no, this is what it was. And by the way, that's a clear sign that a drawing is poorly executed, because even though you'll sometimes move, there's a good technique of moving a drawing such you're drawing it upside down or left or right, or doing studies so you really just focus on the forms and you stop drawing what you think you see and you kind of see it for real, what's really there. But I think that someone who is a strong draftsman would be able to convey what that form is, no matter how you orient the drawing. You still recognize, oh, this is an arm, an arm that's bent with the wrist folding in towards the shoulder, no matter how you orient it. And the fact that I picked this up and I'm like, is it a horse's neck? What the hell is this? That is a form, that's a bad execution of form. I do like that I really separated and got that sense of the underside of the form. But again, just these transitions don't feel volumetric. They feel very graphic and flat. This one I like. Again, a little too graphic and flat, but at least it has a clearer sense of volume and directional light, fronts and sides. That's really what it comes down to when I work on tone. I'm trying to make things feel three-dimensional, and I'm trying to show which side the light's coming from. Those are my main goals. So I do like this one. I'll put it in the blog. Although I have a sneaking suspicion it's one of those drawings that I'm going to put in my blog, that I'm going to look at a month later or 2 months later and say, why did I pick that? And this one, the model was holding a prop, a little sword, behind their shoulder, but this one feels a little bit more volumetric. This one feels more naturalistic, which is what I'm going for. You know, and maybe just now I'm thinking about the fact that I have never been a photorealistic artist. I don't think I'm ever going to be a photorealistic artist. But I think that my leaning away from photorealism might be hurting me, in the sense that I need to, you know what, here's the thing. The problem is the word photo in photorealism. A photograph is capturing a flat graphic form. And I think what I need to focus on is not hyperrealism in the sense of trying to capture every little detail and every little hair and freckle, but a realistic depiction of the information that's presented in front of me. You know, when I'm looking at that, what is the eye really seeing, and how to try and capture that in a drawing. And I feel like this one, the lighting is a little bit more closer to that, even though the anatomy is wonky here in the elbow. So I like this one. I'll put it in the blog for lighting's sake, but it's something for me to think about in my future drawings. And again, this is another one that was like a good start, but a 10-minute pose. Didn't get a chance to get very much in there. It's worth me finishing this as a study. And then this one, I'm pretty happy with how this torso came out. And this one feels volumetric, a little bit more naturalistic. And this is probably really what I need to be doing. It's just when I'm working on a tone paper, it's just decide upper torso or lower torso. Pick an arm or pick a leg. You know, just something simple. And our instructor tells us that. You know, don't try to do the whole figure when you're doing tone paper. But I've spent so much time trying to think of the figure as a whole instead of just an assemblage of parts that it's difficult for me to just draw one body part and focus on that. So it's a battle I still have, because when I'm drawing the full figure, sometimes it does feel like there's just parts smashed together. And since I'm constantly trying to defeat that, trying to think of the whole, or at least the whole torso, it just feels more like what I need to be focusing on. So I like this one. It'll go in the blog. I don't like this one. It won't go in the blog. Poorly executed. This one is not going to go in the blog. And it's poorly executed in the sense that I didn't design this side to really communicate the rib cage. Like, if you look at these three shadows here, they're too similar in size. So it's like it's going boom, boom, boom. It's very repetitive, so it just feels like there's lumps down here, instead of a large mass of tone describing the rib cage, and then finding a subtle way to indicate this, you know, the form coming around and folding in. Because it's really sort of like, here's the entire curvature of the rib cage, coming all the way down to the bottom is here, but this lump really should be indicating the part where it's curving up, going up over the top of the ab muscles. And it just was not executed properly in terms of giving a proper sense of the volumes here. It's really that these two are so similar. This should probably be much smaller and higher up, and then this should probably push down a little bit. And that would have helped just kind of solidify the form a little bit. So while the rendering is a little bit more complete than some of the other ones, it's still the improper and anatomical proportions within the figure bother me. So that one's not going in. And this one's just wonky as all hell. I don't know what I was smoking when I drew this. I think I was trying to say, let's start really simply and just a simple broad tone that's light, and then I thought I would have time to work shadows into it, and then a simple broad tone, simple broad lights on the figure. Just trying to keep it simple and then go in and refine. But again, this was probably me trying to do too much at one time, so. I mean, I could spend days, weeks just redrawing these tone paper drawings. I haven't even gotten to the newsprint stuff that I did this month. I don't know. This one's an in-between drawing. Not great, not horrible. It's out. Okay, on to the newsprint stuff. Let me raise the camera back up a little bit so you guys can see the whole thing here. Pardon me. So a lot of these are like 5-10 minute poses. There might be some 2-minute poses in here. So these are just a lot of the stuff that we do during the opening of class. And these are just sort of like, you know, not really warm-ups per se, but just, you know, where we start in terms of, you know, the beginning of each session, getting a lot more gesture drawing oriented. So I do actually like a lot of the poses that we have here, and my gestures have been feeling very stiff lately. So I was lucky in that we had a day, you know, we always have great models, but I feel like I'm lucky when I'm able to really key in and capture what they're bringing, because the models bring so much to each session. So that one's going in. This one's going in. This is the great Stacy Walker. And this one actually feels like kind of a Simon Beasley drawing to me for some reason. So I like that feel. I love Beasley. I haven't looked at his work in a while. I'm not sure what he's been working on over the past few years, but he is, you know, he is high up there in terms of one of my favorites. My buddy Carl Ulster got me a Beasley sketchbook for Christmas a couple years ago. That was cool. I need to pull that out and look at it again. I haven't looked at his work in a while. Let's see here. I do kind of like these. This one, I like the pose. I don't like my execution of it. This is me doing a poor man's attempt at Claire Wendling type poetic, lyrical spines and curves that she does, and failing at it, and then also just the flattening out. There's no sense of volume in this lower leg. I think I may photograph just the top one and not put the other ones in. Let's see. I like this page as a overall whole. Like this is me redrawing again the same pose, but not being happy with the execution. So going back in and just trying to simplify, like the fact that I've got the rib cage. The rib cage is still here, but it's the very upper ab muscles, and then that separation of the lower pelvis, and then just really simplifying it into pelvis, upper torso. And just that simplification alone improved this quite a bit. And I really can't remember if the model was intentionally turned more towards me, because I have it flattened back, turned a little bit more away from me in this pose. But I felt like there was some nice foreshortening that was going on in here, and I lost that. But in the process of losing that, I sort of cleaned up the silhouette of the figure a little bit. So that's kind of that. The one thing I did lose that I noticed here was the fact that she intentionally had this shoulder raised. And I still have that, but you're not getting as much of that sense of a push as you do in the original drawing. So, but yeah, overall, this page works for me. Let's see here. Let's see. I see Travis is in the chat. What's up, Travis? Going through some figure drawing here. How you doing? Let's see. Yeah, I do like this pose, and I think I'll photograph this one from the page, but overall, the page unto itself, don't feel the need to keep. This is another one where model took a pose and then me redrawing because I didn't really care for the execution. And Amar says, thanks for stopping by a stream last week. I popped in, was watching him doing some 3D modeling in Blender, which was really cool because I have dabbled in Blender, but I haven't really sat down and really spent a lot of time with it because most of my energy is going more towards 2D and figure drawing, but I might be doing a little bit more CAD work in my day job, so it's nice to see someone else who's experienced with it and be able to watch their workflow. So he's got a great stream. If you guys check him out in the chat, click on his icon, go check out his channel. You can watch him getting down and showing his process, except working in 3D. So definitely go check that out. American Swordfish in the chat. Hey, good to see you, Swordfish. Thanks for stopping by. I still feel like with neither one of these poses really, like this one is blockier and defines the form figure, defines the form of the figure more. But I don't know. There's, you know what it is that it's this back leg, which I tried to improve here, and I improved the anatomy of it, but it doesn't feel attached to the figure. I really needed to either move this leg just enough that the upper leg was showing a little bit and push this out or down a little bit more or something, because it just feels weird the way this is disconnected. This drawing right here, this is some good lyrical lines. This I'm actually happy with, which is rare. So I think I will photograph just this one from this page. Let's see here. I think this is about the time I started realizing that my gestures had been getting really wonky, and I was like, I need to get back to better gesture and structure. Yeah, there's nothing on this page that I think is particularly great. There's definitely stuff like I could go back and redraw this for personal improvement and exploration. I think I'd probably be better off working on this one and getting the twist that's going in that torso. I see comments in the chat. Amar asks, "Is this your book?" Referring to my Amazon author page that I mentioned at the top, where you can buy some of my books. He asked about a book called Samurai, the graphic novel, and it is not my book in whole. It's an anthology book, and it has the first chapter of a story that I did. Carl Alstetter is the author. He's the editor and the guy who put the project together. And the idea was for each one of the contributors to contribute an 8-page story that talks about what it means to be a samurai. What is the idea of a samurai? Our re-envisioning of a samurai in the modern age, or in past, future, what have you. And mine ended up being, since originally we only did 1 volume of the anthology, but there was a plan to originally do 3 volumes, and I basically wrote a single issue that was going to be like a 24-page story that was going to be broken up into 3 chapters. My chapter it's a story called Samurai, and it's about this girl who frees an ancient samurai ghost. But now, when his spirit is freed, she's visiting a museum. She draws the sword out of a display. It frees his spirit, but when it does, it also alerts all of his ancient demon enemies that come after him. So now she has to become the defender of the sword, but she's a little girl. That's a bit much for her to be fighting, and killing people and monsters. And so what he does is he casts a spell on her so that anyone she strikes with the sword gets turned to an animal. And so that was basically going to be the conceit for the series. And I just got this story with this girl who can hit people with swords, turn them to animals. Again, I've actually never published the full story unto itself, so I probably should do that someday. But the first chapter of Samurai is within Samurai the graphic novels. It's an anthology. Carl Ulstetter does a story in there. My buddy Dan Smith does a story in there. Jesse Toves writes and draws a story. The cover is by Drew Edward Johnson. So it's a great project. I'm proud of it. That's why it's connected and shared on my my Amazon author page. Although I am not the full author, I just did one short story on it. Amara's also asking, so Eye of the Gods is a graphic novel, and then Wound: The Art of Jeremy Burley, Volume 1. Yeah, those are all mine. And he said, because I didn't get to pick them up last week, I'm picking them up now. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the support, man. And he says I finished my my new web series synopsis or plots for 6 of them on my stream today. I'm glad to hear, man. Glad you're making progress. I hope all of you are making some progress on your creative projects, because it's very, very hard to keep moving forward, particularly when you're doing something like comics, which takes a long time. It's hard when you have a long form project that may take weeks, may take months, may take years to complete. So anytime you guys make any progress on it or reach a milestone, you deserve a congratulations. So keep up the good work, guys. American Swordfish also says that he likes this top one on the left. Thank you. Let's see. We've been staring at this long enough. These aren't going in the blog. We can get rid of that. And I see Amaris in the chat. She said she's home from the hospital. Yeah, I heard you were going through some stuff last week. I'm really sorry to hear that, but I'm glad that you're home. But you've been going through, like, before with hurting your wrist and all this other stuff. Like, whew, you've had a hell of a time. You got to take good care of yourself. Self-care is important for artists. If we're not healthy, we can't create. Let's see. And Amar says, those 2 books are bought. Do you have any more? The only other book is Volume 1 of Morningstar. So that one, I hope it showed up on the page. That's the main big project. And soon I will be finishing up Morningstar Volume 2, and that one will be out. I'm going to be, getting back to working on that final issue. So... And after that, I have to decide what project I want to do next, because I've been batting around a sequel to Eye of the Gods, and I've got like 3 or 4 different possible stories to do for that. The problem being is that none of them feel like a must-do, like this is a story I have to do next. And I realized that there's stories I could do, but I heard a writing podcast. It might have been the Writers Channel, but there was an interview with some author who had written a screenwriter who had written a lot of film, a lot of TV, and was at the point now where they had to start saying no to projects. And they were saying something I've heard a lot of writers say, which is, if it's not a hell yeah, then it has to be a no. And I think the challenge I have right now is that I have stories I can do that are sequels to Eye of the Gods, but they're not hell yeahs. They're just, this would work. This is a story I could do. But I'm tempted to bring up another project that I'm more excited about and raise that in the queue in terms of what I'm going to be writing, but kind of flip back and forth and keep working on the Eye of the Gods sequel, because I've promised people for years I was going to do a sequel to it, but just keep working on it until I have it to someplace where I'm really, really excited about it. I think the only drawing on this page, I like the gesture and the energy on this one, even though it's probably, the figure's a bit exaggerated and too long. I do like this, although I feel like I got a little bit too hard of a sharp line there in terms of dividing the external obliques coming down the figure. So it's a little bit off. This one would probably be a good one for me to redraw and correct anatomically, also because there's some nice foreshortening where the shoulder meets the torso, and just the arm in general. So maybe I'll save this one for redrawing. Let's see here. Let me pop back to the chat. Amara says, yeah, I know about self-care. And she says, I'm taking better care of myself now. Good. I'm happy to hear it. Let's keep you happy and healthy and making art for a long time. Ion Rock says, I prefer fake anatomy. Real anatomy is goofy looking. Well, you know, that's the goal in studying anatomy, is how to make the goofy look not goofy. You know who makes anatomy not look goofy? Michelangelo. And Michelangelo, being a sculptor, I have found that even though I study his drawings and I learn a lot about draftsmanship from his drawings, I do feel like he's one of the few that, looking at his sculptures, can teach draftsmen more about anatomy because of the fact that they're in the round. You can really see how he's describing, because he does simplify and enhance the human form, but his masterful explanation of it, and then try to take that and just apply it to comics. That's all. Study Michelangelo, copy his style, and apply it to comics. There you go. That's your lesson for the day. Oh, and Amar said, in talking about Morningstar, that he bought that one when he first started watching watching my channel. Said, yeah, I've been going to Cairo 3 days a week and had a slight scare 2 weeks ago with chest pains. The whole thing ended up being nothing when I went to the hospital. Well, I'm glad it ended up being nothing. And in the end, it's better to go through all of that work and find out that you're okay than to ignore those kind of signs and have it develop into something more serious. So I'm glad you went and got that checked out. You know, I mean, that's the other reason why physical activity is really important. Like, I've given up some of my drawing time in order to get to bed early so I can wake up an hour early and work out during the weekdays, because I realize that getting like an extra, getting a little bit of exercise every day, even if it's only a half hour, like, I'll feel better, I sleep better at night, I'm healthier, and I'm crankier because I'm not getting as much drawing done as I'd like. But I realized that I need to pay attention to my health. So that's something that, for all of us, we're trying to do. Ion Rock says, it's all based on how, we're talking back to anatomy again. It's Amar says to Ion Rocks, it's all based on how it is drawn. You can still use real anatomy for a style that looks good. Also, comics anatomy is based on real anatomy, which, yes, true. Do not study anatomy from comics. Study from the old masters. Study from instructional art books. Do not study anatomy from comics. A lot of times, comic creators are drawing as fast as they can. They're working under a deadline. And something that may look really, really cool might not be the best description of anatomy. And I think most comic artists would agree with me that while there are some great artists in comics, and there's great artists who do things with imaginary anatomy, you want to learn the basics from the real world and then apply that to your art, rather than just copying the anatomy of other comic artists. Let's see here. This one, nothing special about this drawing. I do like the actual pose, the simplicity of the tilt of the form here, but and the feet being folded in. I didn't even finish this leg. I presume that this is one where this foot's folded in and this foot is angled behind. But again, that's a poor sign of an opening drawing, that I didn't even describe enough that I know where all the body parts are, because that should be the bare bones, pun intended, of what I get down. So this one's not going in. Let's see. Iron Rocks says, also, real people are sad looking. I said, this is why I told you a while ago that I prefer the simplified comics outlook. Well, you know what? Real people are only sad looking if you draw them that way. If they're sad, it might be because you're interpreting that sadness, or, you might be projecting it. There's lots of people you can draw that are joyous and happy. You look at somebody like Anders Zorn, and you look at the series of paintings he's done of people frolicking and playing at the beach. You could do Zorn or Soroya, and you look at either one of those, and they make real life look very, very happy. And you know who else makes real life look very happy? Rockwell. Rockwell draws a lot of people celebrating everyday life. And if you've never read it, I highly, highly recommend Norman Rockwell's My Life as an Illustrator. It's his autobiography, and you know, he struggles with a lot of the same things that we struggle with in terms of just trying to get our drawings to feel real and lifelike, or not even a matter of real in terms of realism, but just trying to get it to describe what's in our heads. You read that back to back with Irving Stone's The Agony and the Ecstasy. Those two books are, you know what? I'll put a link, an affiliate link in the description for the video. Let me make a note to do that. That way, when the live stream's over, you guys can just click over and check that out. But those two books are sort of some of the greatest books I've seen, and sort of insights into the artistic inner life, and you know, our struggles, and knowing that great artists throughout history have the exact same problems that we have, and it makes you feel a little bit better. I see Art of Read is in the chat too. Hey, thanks for joining us. I'll get back to some more comments in the chat in a second. This one I think I will put in the blog. This was a 15-minute drawing. Ever since I've been doing the live streams, I started putting notes on there just because I know people ask how long did it take to draw these drawings. So I think only once or twice a year do we ever do drawings that are a full 25 minutes, but we're never doing like hour-long drawings. So this is what I can draw of the torso in 15 minutes. And the thing you have to remember is that we're all at different skill levels, because I know there's people who look at this and think that this is an amazing amount of detail and work to get in 15 minutes. And then I know people who in 15 minutes can draw the whole figure with this level of detail and draw it better. So I mean, there's all sorts of different ranges and levels of skill that artists are at. You're never done, and in a certain way, you can go crazy comparing yourself to other artists. I look at it less about comparing myself, and I look at it more as aspiration. Like when I look at Michelangelo or Norman Rockwell, it's not so much I'm saying, oh, I'll never be as good as them. It's more like my mind imagines one level of what I'm capable of as an artist. And when you look at someone like a Michelangelo or a Rockwell, being very different artists, but both amazingly talented, that they show me, oh, wait, the art world is this much bigger. It's so much bigger than what you're seeing. And that's how I look at it. So it's not comparisonitis and, oh, I'm never going to be that good. It's by looking at their work, they're expanding my idea of what's possible, and that inspires me to reach farther and higher. So this one's going in the blog. So let's see here. Back to the chats. Oh, wow. Okay. I see Avante's in the chat. He asks, who is your favorite inker? Oh, wow, that's tough. Honestly, it's hard for me to say in terms of contemporary inkers, because there are so many great inkers out there. When I think to like all-time favorite inkers, it's probably going to be Wally Wood, who is a fantastic illustrator in his own right, which, I mean, and that's also true of a lot of inkers. There's a lot of great inkers out there that are fantastic. Now, in terms of just personally inkers that are my favorite, you know, I would have to give a shout out to my buddy Peter Palmiotti, because he's one of my favorite people, and he is an inker. So by default, he is one of my favorite inkers. So definitely give him some love. And he's working on his comic Retro on his channel, and I think his channel is Human Art Studios on YouTube. Don't quote me on that, but if you search for Peter Palmiotti, you'll find his work out there. Let's see here. Let me go back here now, because I think I may have missed a couple of people's comments. So, oh yeah, Amara said she started her book yesterday. The theme is Oriental Fashion Friends, and she's in the thumbnailing phase right now. I gotta tell you, you know from my channel, I'm all about the thumbnails. I love thumbnailing. I almost love it to a fault, like to the point that I spend way too much time doing it, because I just enjoy. It's that phase when everything is possible and you haven't screwed everything up yet. So, not you, me. You're not gonna screw anything up. Yours is gonna come out great. Let's see here. Ion Rock says comics fake it, and I like that. Back to the discussion of anatomy. You know, You know what you want. You know what makes you happy. I'm of the mindset of taking the real and then applying it to not fake, but to illustrative. But you know what you enjoy and you know what you enjoy making. Carry on with that. In the end, you don't have to please anyone else. Just please yourself. Make the things that you enjoy. And if you only enjoy artwork that's less realistic and more faking anatomy and more stylized, enjoy what you love. Follow your passions. That's all that matters. Amara says, I use my mangaka life as inspiration because she's promoting studying from life. Amar also says, I know hyperrealism is a pain, but if it's done well, it can be like a great movie with great visuals. Amara says she's awesome inspiration for adults and teens. She says, check her out. My Mangaka Life on YouTube. I will give that a look-see. Iron Rock says, yeah, but is all perspective based on reality. Now we're going back to realism. And says, for me, it's all based on the amount of time. Nothing is impossible to draw, to do, because you just have to buckle down and just doing it. So in other words, we're celebrating eccentricity. Art of Reed says he also follows my Mangaka Life. So, okay, I think we're caught up on a lively chat today, guys. Thanks for everyone jumping in and commenting. You know, it's funny. Every time I go through these reviews of figure drawing, I always feel like, oh, well, I'm going to go through this, and I'll hopefully have time at the end and maybe just do some drawing. And then I look up, and there's like, 10 minutes left, and I've still got a stack of drawings to go through. This one, I think I may photograph it for my reference, and I do need to save this as a drawing to redraw and to study from. The reason for that is because I really like this ankle and this calf, but I just fell down on the kneecap here. It just didn't come together. So it's worth me documenting and me studying from, but still not perfect. Well, nothing's perfect, but it doesn't capture what I was going for. I always find that interesting when I have a drawing that has like 60% of what I really, really wanted to get, and then 30% just falls off the rails. And it's just like, no, why couldn't I carry it all the way to the finish line? But that's what going to figure drawing classes and analyzing my work is about. It's about me trying to figure out where can I get those last 10 yards? Where can I get those last 5 yards? This one, again, this was a 10-minute pose. So a little bit longer, but focusing more on just rendering the torso and, getting in just enough stick figure of where the rest of the form is placed. This is one of those that I don't necessarily feel the need to put in the blog, but I feel like I would be curious to see what would happen if I were to go draw the rest of it. Just finishing off the piece. Let's see here. Some more comments in the chat. Jay King has to go off to work, so thank you again for stopping by. I appreciate you hanging in there. Always good to see you. So thanks for hanging out. You have a good day at work. Amar says to Amara that he checked out my Mangaka Life. Checked out her style. It's a bit different than what I grew up on, but if you like it, it's great, but I'm a bit more old school. I'm not sure if we're talking about old school manga versus new school manga, because to be honest, I haven't really looked at much manga since like the mid-2000s. When the Korean manga started reaching the United States, the manhwa phase, when we were seeing a lot of that stuff being published by Dark Horse, I think that was probably the last time I was looking at manga with any regularity. I recently have been getting back into Lone Wolf and Cub because I never finished this series. And they have the entire series as a collection from Dark Horse. So I want to go back and and read that. Let's see here. Says, I like the 19th century artists more because of their approach. And she says that's cool too. Amara says that's cool too. I study from real life and apply it to manga art. And I think that right there is the answer. It's taking all different forms of classical illustration and instructional art and Renaissance artists, and then applying that, because in the end, that's all almost like a costume or a suit. The actual finished, whether you're drawing like a contemporary manga artist or you're more illustrative or photorealistic, that's the suit that goes over the composition and the anatomy and the volume. So being able to apply all of that work to whatever style you're working in, I think that's a very wise approach. So let's see here. I'm just making some notes that I meant to put down earlier. Was it? All right. Let's see here. What else is going on in the chat? Oh, Ion Rocks asks, what do you think of Bart Sears' work? I like Bart Sears' work. I used to read his Brutes and Babes column. I remember a lot of his early work, I think, for Valiant when he was doing Exo Manowar, and I think he did a few other books for them. I don't put him in the list of artists that are like my go-tos in terms of influence and inspiration, but I very much like his work. I'd gladly read a comic book that he drew. He's a good artist. He's a solid artist. And I think if you look at his work, you'll see that while his work is very imaginative and, the muscles are very inflated and dynamic, I think that you can still see his own Bart Sears study of the anatomy of the old masters. And to me, it seems as if you took, like, if Burne Hogarth were alive today, he'd be Bart Sears. Like, because Hogarth does get criticized as an art instructor for the fact of drawing all of the muscles like they're all inflated and everything is flexed all at once. And some people criticize Hogarth for that, but I understand why he's doing it, in the sense that he's doing it to make these muscles as visible as possible. It just doesn't necessarily give you a naturalistic look at how those muscles really would be contracted or relaxed at any given state. Like, even his relaxed muscles still look super contracted. That said, you look at like Bart Sears' work, he knows anatomy, and his artwork is very dynamic. But his figures have that, and I don't mean this as a negative. This is just what his work says to me, which is that it has that hyper energized, like everything is flexed and moving and powerful, and that's a conscious choice. If he wanted to do a very naturalistic looking human figure, he can. He knows how to do that. So yeah, I like Bart Sears. I think that when you mention the thing about not liking particularly realistic anatomy, I think you're missing the fact that even someone like Bart Sears, who you think of as the superhero-iest of superhero art, that his work is very, very highly influenced, I think, by the old masters. Let's see here. Before we get back into the chat, I was just going to switch pages because I've just been talking and not going through any of these. So yeah, this is again me trying to capture a very subtle overlap with figures and a very subtle curve that the figure had, but I don't feel like any of these I really captured the elegance of the model. I don't really like the way this one came out. I do like this one. Like, this almost feels like Tarzan from Disney's Tarzan. So I think I will photograph this one. This model was hard to draw because he is extremely elegant. Like, he's a man whose body looks like Michelangelo's David. When you look at him, like, there was one pose he took, and I was just like, holy shit, I'm drawing the David. He's the David. It's kind of crazy. So I think I need to save this one for redrawing, because this one was elegant but too lumpy. This was me trying to get in and analyze it, and somehow I made it lumpier. And god damn, this is horrible how lumpy this thigh is. So for those reasons alone, I need to save this one for redraw. Like when I see a page of like really, really bad drawings, I'm all, oh wait, I need to get in and work on this. So I'm saving this one for a redrawing, fixing bad figure drawing session. And I think this was the pose that he took where I saw Michelangelo's David in it. So let me pop back into the chat real quick. Let's see here. So Amar says, I tend to follow channels that are close within that style. I think we're talking about like sort of classical illustration. I could never get into drawing manga. I'm sure I can do it. You know, a comment on that, my opinion is the more simplistic the style, the more challenging it can be, because the fewer lines you have in a drawing, the more each line needs to be in the right place. You have to be better with each line. I actually have quite a bit of respect for, I mean, some manga I look at and it all looks the same, but I'm not saying that about manga in general. I think that manga in general I think it is challenging to draw good manga. So I have a lot of respect for manga. My tastes tend towards actually manga artists that don't look like what someone would say is stereotypical. Like I'm more sort of like a Masamune Shiro, the creator of Appleseed and Ghost in the Shell. I lean towards him and Katsuhiro Otomo from Akira. Again, that's old school manga, but those tend to be the manga artists that I gravitate towards. And maybe we just gravitate towards whatever we were exposed to when we were a teenager, and that's it. You like what like you've got a window from about 12 to 16, and whatever you're exposed to then is what you think is awesome no matter what anyone says. That might be the way it goes. I might just be hardwired to like that stuff. Amar also says, I think drawing dynamic anatomy and hyper-realistic art are more of a challenge I look forward to. And it is challenging. Avante asks, also, what art college did you go to if you went to one? I went to UCLA. I went to their fine art program. And it was a mixed blessing because the program is more geared towards the gallery scene, the contemporary gallery scene. So more of more conceptual artwork, and whether you're doing drawing or painting, have an idea or concept behind that you're trying to express, and it taught you how to. This is the reason why I seem to go on and on and on about these different things with artists, because they taught you how to speak about what your intent is, to have a creative vision and to be able to describe it. That was kind of the big thrust and big thing I took away from that. So I try to really think about those kinds of intents in all of the work that I make. That said, they were not necessarily concerned with draftsmanship. If you had an interesting idea and a concept that supported the idea, the execution of it in a way was almost secondary. So I actually came out of college, I think, a worse draftsman than I went in. And it wasn't until I started taking animation classes towards the end, I was like, oh wait, animators need to understand how to revolve things in space. They actually draw the way that I want to draw. And that's when I started learning more and more about the field of animation and pursuing that. But so it was a mixed blessing. Overall, it was a great experience. But these days, there's so many, art school is so expensive. And there's so many great programs out there like Bobby Chu's Schoolism, and there's Smart School online. And I mean, I went to school on an athletic scholarship, and I really felt like the opportunity to go to UCLA is not something that I would turn down ever. That said, I think that unless it's affordable for you, art school, if I had to do over again, I think I probably still would have been an art major. I probably would have done the exact same thing over again because I'm stubborn. But the smart thing would have been to actually become a business major, maybe specifying in marketing, and learning how to run a business, because that's something that you can apply to your own career as an artist. If you want to run your own art studio, if you want to start your own career as a freelancer, or whether it's just creating your own work and setting up a website and selling it, those are all things that you would benefit from taking that kind of program. And then I would have just spent all of my spare time drawing on my own, taking figure drawing workshops, and supplementally using electives for art. That's probably what I would have done if I had to do over again. Um, I don't think there's anything wrong with art school except for how expensive it is. To be honest, if it was affordable, I would recommend everybody do it, even if you're not an art major, because I feel that making art enriches all of our lives. I think people are happier when they make things. And it's just a shame that it's become so expensive. And that's not to say that I don't think that teachers don't deserve to be compensated. They deserve to be compensated very well. It just feels like there's a disconnect between between what the students get out of it versus how much they pay for it. So let's see. Let me go through a couple more here, and because we're like over an hour now, and let me go through this, a couple more drawings, go through the chat, and then hopefully we'll wrap it up in the next 10 minutes here. This is this pose is the one that reminded me of the David. I like it. I like both of these. I don't necessarily think that they're worth going in the blog, though. I do like this one, and I wish I had handled that hand in the foreground a little bit better, but I think I will photograph this one for the blog, and it's very possible I'll photograph it and then later on come back and decide why did I put that in there. And then these are some 1-minute poses. So if you wonder, in terms of gesture drawing, a lot of times my gesture drawings are really just simple stick figures. And I just try to get down the major limbs, what direction the feet are pointing. Like, this is not a great drawing, but it is enough of a gesture drawing that I could come in and do a finished drawing on top of it. And I think that's the point of doing 1-minute poses, is to make you get better at getting down to the essence of the drawing, the essence of what the figure is doing, and then be able to apply that to basically do this at the start of any drawing, whether it's a 10-minute drawing, 20-minute drawing, 8-minute drawing, is to be able to start within 1 minute, getting the full proportions and the energy of the pose and actually describing what the figure's doing. That said, not going in the blog. Doesn't really say anything, but it's worth sharing with you guys. I say that not as a diss, but as you guys get like extra behind the scenes stuff that people on the blog won't necessarily get. Okay, let me go back because now the chat is lit. The chat is lit, y'all. All right. Let me go back up to Amar says, I'm sure if I did manga it would be more popular because more people are into that on YouTube. But then it would be a disservice to what I'm trying to do and build. I like Hogarth because even with exaggeration, at least it allowed you to see the muscles, so you understand the flow of muscles. He says Loomis and Bridgman. I definitely lean more towards Loomis and Bridgman in terms of art instruction. I still have a copy of Dynamic Anatomy, Hogarth's Dynamic Anatomy, that I have had since high school. It was the first anatomy book I ever bought. I don't open it as much anymore for the reasons I talked about in terms of everything looking super flexed, but I can't disavow Hogarth. It's sort of like, he was the first anatomy. It was the first anatomy book that I was exposed to, and it put me on the road and the path towards studying the structure of the figure. I think it was very important in my studying the human form. So let's see. Iron Rocks is probably off topic. But I almost forgot. What's your take on Joe Quesada? And did you ever read Sword of Azrael? I love Sword of Azrael. I love Joe Quesada's work. I'm pissed off that I still haven't read his run of Daredevil that I did with Kevin Smith. I think Quesada is an artist who definitely exaggerates anatomy and does fantastical work, but I think the covers that he's done in later years when he moved into his editor-chief and then chief creative officer position, where he really didn't have time to do much drawing anymore except for the occasional cover here and there, I'd say that his contemporary work is probably, subdued is the wrong word, but I would say that it's not as exaggerated. It still has the same energy he's always had, but but it's just not as exaggerated. Um, but yes, I really do like Joe Quesada as an artist. I've never read his self published series that he did with Jimmy Palmiotti, the Ash, where the firefighter superhero series. I remember when it came out. I mean, there's so many great comics that I haven't read just because of lack of time, but that was one of the books that I always wanted to go back and read. So I'll put it on my list. Hopefully, I can get through it. There's more books out there than I'm gonna have time to read before I die. Iron Rocks says Musashi Kishimoto was was more was more comics looking near the end of Naruto. I have never read Naruto. I know it. I know how popular it is. I know that I could just watch the series. I've never, and it's not a diss. It's just I haven't had time to watch it. Only so many hours in the day. I haven't had time to watch or read it, but I'm aware of it. To be honest, if there was a manga, I am less driven by artistic styles being manga versus like a Franco-Belgian like clean line like Hergé versus painted comics. I am less interested in what the style of rendering is than I am about is the concept of the story interesting to me. That draws me in more because I'll read comics in any style. If I were gonna pick up a manga right now, probably would be on the top of my list is I can't remember the name of the creator, but it's that book Monster, where there's a serial killer that I believe is this doctor helps save this boy as a child, and but the boy grows up to be a serial killer, and now sort of like a cat and mouse, where for some reason or another he's like stalking and chasing that doctor, and the doctor is like the only one who knows who he really is. I only know the concept of the story vaguely, but it's sort of a suspenseful serial killer thriller, kind of like a Hannibal meets Death Note. That's at least the description that other people have given me, and that has nothing to do with what the style of the artwork is. It's really just that the concept sounds interesting and something I'd want to read. So I mean, when it comes to Naruto, I mean, it could be something that could be drawn by like Declan Shelvey. It could be something that's drawn by Alex Toth. It's not necessarily whether or not I like that style of art. It's really just, is the concept interesting to me? So let me see some more stuff in the chat here. Amar says that I only say that because I draw cartoons or have cartoons, so I know how to simplify lines. I guess we're talking about like doing anime and being good at it, or having a being successful at it. I know how to simplify lines that capture that style. I've been a chameleon in that way. You know what? Kudos to you, because I used to be an artistic chameleon, and I have very much fallen into my own style. I don't have that mimic ability that much anymore. It says, that's why I love animation, but that takes way more time than comics do. That's why I can't wait to retire or find a way to stop working and bet on myself. I hear you. If I could do it all over again, I would never go to school, especially I would never go to school, especially with the amount of resources available on the internet. Iron Rock says, I think AI will make much better teachers. I can't wait. Mara says, I didn't go to school for art, but it was art related. It just didn't help in any regards in my career. It was just a piece of paper. The biggest issue as an artist is the ability to be persistent and understand I need or we need to get out of our own way from overthinking and being critical of our work. Art of Reed says Jack Ham had some great drawing books as well. Well, I don't know if you've seen my the video on my Patreon, the my top 10 drawing books. But oh no, it was my art bookshelf tour, where I go through and I just show like the bookshelf that's behind next to my drawing table. But I keep a stack of Jack Ham books. So I've got his drawing the head and figure, I've got his drawing scenery, landscapes and seascapes, and I've got how to draw animals. These are like my 3 go-tos. Love me some Jack Ham. So thanks for throwing that out there, Art, for Art of Read. Iron Rock says, I saw Musashi Kishimoto's artwork evolve through the whole series, plus Naruto is wild. You know what? A lot of people have recommended it to me. If I can carve out some time, I will. I'll put it on the list, but I don't know how soon I'm going to get to it because I literally have a massive stack of physical books and some digital books that I need to read through. Oh, there we go. Amar says he just chimed in with the books I did. He says have his drawing scenery, landscape, and seascapes book. I need to spend some more time in practice. Maybe I'll do that as a series from my channel. Yes, you definitely should, because I haven't been doing any drawing from that book online. Somebody else out there should be hyping that book. So please jump on that. There we go. He says, his animal books. Art of Reed says his animal books are amazing, and Amara says, never drew animals. I know Aaron Blaze draws them all the time. I may get to it one day. Here's an interesting thing that I learned in drawing animals is that we always struggle to get that poetry and elegance in the human form. And the beauty of drawing animals is that they have none of the self-consciousness that humans do. So it's like animals are hard because they're pure beauty. They exist in that natural elegance that we're always trying to capture. All right, so let me get through this last stack of drawings here because we're well over an hour now. I like this drawing, and I'll put this in the blog. The rest of these are some very nice, simple gestures, but not necessarily worth blogging about. Don't know if you can hear Kachu, my art director, meowing in the back. Let's see here. Yeah, this one, super wonky. This is supposed to be one where the rear leg is coming back, and this leg is supposed to be foreshortening going forward onto a stand. This is worth saving for me to redraw from, because it just looks like a leg that's too short and out to the side. You don't get that real sense of it receding in space and it moving away from the hip into the distance. So I need to work on that, those kinds of subtle foreshortenings. Oh, I see El Gargoyles in the chat. Thanks for stopping by and joining. Says, Hail, learning Sketchbook Pro on a Surface Pro. Do you think it's a good app for drawing comic pages? I haven't used Sketchbook Pro in a long time. And when I have, I used it on an iPad before the Apple Pencil came out. So I really think that if you've got a good stylus, and the Surface Pro is a great machine. I've got friends that draw comics in that. I think I think Sketchbook Pro is perfectly fine. I've got a buddy of mine, my buddy Jesse Tovez. He draws all his comics in GIMP on his Surface Pro, and he swears by GIMP, even though I personally love Procreate. That is my favorite tablet drawing program. Amar in the chat also recommends Clip Studio. I think there's a lot of good programs out there. I don't think there's anything wrong with, if Sketchbook Pro is working for you, keep using that. I think Procreate is probably one of my favorites. It's worth giving a shot, and it's not that expensive. There's Clip Studio. And then I've been using Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer, and they make very good mobile app versions of those programs as well. So all good stuff to check out. In the end, what tool you use, that's always a personal choice. There's a reason why there's so many apps. There's always going to be one that fits some creator better than another. This pose is kind of funky because the model is a contortionist. He was intentionally, like, every once in a while, just do a weird pose like this one where he's got the leg up behind him. And yes, his elbow is resting over his foot. That is physically what was happening. And I think I want to keep this one only because I want to redraw it such that when you look at this, it just looks a little weird to you. You can't quite tell exactly what's going on. I need to do more of the shoulder muscles wrapping around the foot a little bit, like giving you that sense of lift and the elbow hanging on there a little bit more. It's such a weird pose that I want to dive into it more. This drawing on its own, it's not going in the blog, but I want to save this for me to study from. This one, nothing special here. Spent 5 minutes basically blocking out the whole figure and then just drawing the arm. I think a lot of times I'll start with blocking. If I'm trying to work on just one area, I'll start by blocking out the whole figure, and I'm not sure what I'm going to focus on yet. But even with focusing on the arm, it's not a particularly great arm either. So, no, nothing special there. And this was me kind of cutting back down into saying, all right, let me just focus more on a single piece of anatomy, a limb or a torso. I do like what I had going on in this torso in terms of the rendering and getting that that rounded shape of the rib cage, but I feel like I failed right in here at the external obliques. This transition from as the torso is turning from up to tilted towards the viewer, that this transition, the way I've rendered the external obliques here, I feel like it's a fail. And it's a shame because the overall drawing is very nice, but anatomically there's something in here that's broken and wonky. And it could just be having this curve up a little bit and then down in to meet it. And the problem with this one is that I feel like I would need to have the model in front of me, because I could imagine proper solutions to what this should look like and redraw it in different ways until it looks right to me. But the challenge here is taking what you perceive when you're in front of a model during a figure drawing session and translating that into a drawing. So I feel like I really need that visual reference of being there in front of the model and having another bite at this apple. So nothing in here is going to go in, even though I do feel like it's a nice drawing. And then this was just me doing weird overlapping, just working on knees. I was just working on knees. It was just me doing a series of overlapping feet. And I don't know what the hell was going on with this foot, in that there being this large lump and then incredibly short feet. It just looks weird. I don't know what the hell. I mean, this in itself is kind of nice and artistic, the way that these knees, these legs are wrapping into each other. And this is almost like doing a drawing of like a sea of hands folding around each other and wrapping each other. It's stuff that I've experimented with just to get better at drawing hands. I like the way that I rendered all of these calf muscles, but yeah, it's just weird, off. If they were better executed, that could have been a really interesting art piece. But that happens. You know, you try stuff, you take a stab at it, you know, you see what you can do, and then you move on to the next thing. Let's see here. Back to the chat. Let's see here. Yeah, so Amar recommended mentioned Krita as an app, saying it has a workflow similar to Clip Studio. And El Gargoyle says, I don't have the money for extra apps right now. And Amar says, I did my Inktober with 9 different applications. Most are free. You know, El Gargoyle, it's probably worth going over to Amar's his channel, because he talks about the apps that he uses for his projects on there as well. Because I think he is much more into a digital workflow than I am. And again, I've said this before, I am not anti-digital. I'm in front of a computer all day when I'm at work, so I intentionally do traditional media when I'm doing my personal stuff. I am not anti-making art digitally. But if you're looking for someone to get deeper into working, using apps, drawing apps to create comics, it might be worthwhile looking at his stuff, because he's more into a digital workflow than I am and can probably give you better recommendations. Because for me, it kind of begins and ends at Procreate, so I'm a shill for them. I just like that the most. All right, so again, these are just some more structural, more diagrammatic studies in that same class I've been taking. Nothing in here that needs to go in the blog. And this just feels like just I poured goo down the bones. These are just drippy muscles. It's not working. These are a little better and feel a little bit more solid, but still kind of drippy muscles. drippy muscles. These just, you know what, these are on their way to becoming good drawings. Like this one, I can feel I got a clear separation of each of the muscle groups. And that's good. It just doesn't have as much rhythm. And maybe the lines inside separating the groups maybe shouldn't be as bold as I've drawn them here. So these are less, oh, I'm critical of them, and more of, oh, this is pointing a big arrow towards what I need to pay attention to improve and get better. So none of those are going in the blog. This was a great pose our model did. I think this was like the last pose he did of the night, where he was standing on his head with his legs crossed above. And it was just a crazy pose. All these were like 2-minute poses. So he started doing like handstands and doing like crazier stuff for us. And that's really cool when you have a model who's capable of doing that physically. It's also really challenging because the more surrealistic the pose, the more you're like chasing this thing that's really hard to do. Again, another shot where he's got his legs behind his head. This is a great gesture that he has over here. These are all really short poses. Again, this is almost could be like a Batman or a Daredevil pose. Probably more Daredevil because he's leaner. But, you know, these are some nice quick gestures, 2-minute poses. Trying to get down foreshortening in 2 minutes, that can be tough. And this just way too elongated. And yeah, that looks like that's it. So that is all my figure drawing from the past month. Having him bowing at the end feels like it's a nice note to end on. So one quick last look at the chat. And Amar says, I want to do traditional comics. It's a bit messier and I don't have the space, but as I find more time when I'm ready to do it, I will do some traditional work. He says, I love drawing with ballpoint pens because they feel like pencils. I also love gel pens as well to draw with. And Amar says, thanks for the stream. And no, thank you. Thank you for all the great comments and participating. Thank you to all of you that are watching. Thanks to everyone who watches in the replay. Again, if you enjoy these videos, if you find them inspirational, educational in any way, or helpful, please support the channel. Go to patreon.com/GERIMI. As I mentioned, I do a bonus live stream once a month. Right now, the series I'm doing is Art Book Study Group, and I'm currently working through Walt Reed's The Figure, and I'm just going through page by page and doing studies from it and explaining my process for studying from an art book. So you can get that all for as little as $2 a month if you go to patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to read some of my comics again, if you'd like to see how I'm applying all this figure drawing knowledge that I'm studying and the way I'm trying to work out these different anatomy and drawing concepts in comic book pages, you can go to news.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase some of my books, as Amar has, which again, thank you so much, man. I appreciate the support and I hope you enjoy them. If you'd like to read physical copies of my books, or if you're living internationally outside the US, they're also available on Kindle. You can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That's it for now. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your weekend. Go be creative.